Groups trying to ban mifepristone, the abortion pill, lost already at the Supreme Court, but they're hoping that their inside man, RFK Jr., the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, is going to help them out. And it turns out he may very well do that. He just announced that the FDA plans on conducting a review of the label it has given the abortion pill, which is by far the most commonly used method of abortion in the United States. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down. Now, as we know, you heard, because we covered it here on MeidasTouch, the groups sued, trying to say that the FDA label that had been given to it back in 2000. I mean, this is how long this has been on the market, how long this pill has been on the market, how long the FDA has approved it for medical abortions. They tried to get the courts to reverse that label. And this case went all the way in front of the Supreme Court. And in fact, Erin Hawley, the wife of Senator Josh Hawley, is the one that argued for the pro-life alliance groups, saying that the FDA label should be revoked. But the Supreme Court denied this. They said that essentially these doctors didn't have standing. No doctor in America is ever forced to write a prescription for a medical abortion or to provide a medical abortion that is protected under the law. Like, no doctor is forced to do that. And so they said that these doctors have no harm. They cannot bring the case because they have demonstrated no harm. And the irony here, is that they were trying to reverse this FDA label, saying that it was wrongly given, that this isn't as safe as the FDA said, but yet could come up with no women who could argue that harm in front of the Supreme Court. Instead, they have to go to the doctors. Well, they failed. They failed miserably at the Supreme Court. This Supreme Court that seems incapable of protecting a woman's right, in that case, even could not side with the doctors. Well, now we have a different situation. Of course, in that case, it was the Biden's FDA that argued in defense of their label. And now with Trump and RFK Jr., we've already heard this week of the attacks on women's healthcare, frankly, whether or not they can even use Tylenol during pregnancy. And now this announcement that the FDA plans on reviewing their label. And the reason, obviously, this is so important is because if the FDA revokes that label or alters that label, it may make it impossible or harder for women to be able to receive a medical abortion. Now, this was brought up by Senator Josh Hawley when RFK Jr. was in front of a committee in May. Again, the wife argued the case in the Supreme Court, and now Josh Hawley is bringing this fact up to RFK Jr. in this hearing. Let's take a listen, and then we'll talk about it.
You say that it probably indicates the label needs to be changed. Do you think it's also important as part of your review to consider whether it's necessary now to put back in place the long-standing safety protocols that always accompanied mifepristone until the last administration? In-person dispensing, doctor visits, screening for ectopic pregnancies?
I know that Marty McCary will make a recommendation. I feel that the policy changes will ultimately go through the White House, through President Trump.
Now, of course, these Republicans are going after this medical abortion because they've already took a huge chunk into a woman's ability to have an abortion. 16 states now after Dobbs have outlawed it entirely. But this medical abortion, these abortion pills are about 58% of abortions. And some people, even in those 16 states, can still receive pills through telehealth because of shield laws that the doctors have in the states where it is legal to prescribe them. So this is why Josh Hawley and all of them and RFK Jr. are now going after mifepristone. And they have a Project 2025 group, the Heritage Foundation, is the one that backed this quote study that Hawley mentions in that hearing. This study was conducted by the group called the Ethics and Public Policy Center. They like to use titles of the exact opposite of the things they do. And this study was not peer reviewed, and it was published just on its website, not in a scientific journal. So if you're going to even buy like the most basic product or supplement these days, people care about whether or not something has been tested by a third party, let's say. Not getting peer reviewed is essentially saying that nobody has looked at your data. That is what it's saying. Nobody has looked at your data. So this data being generated by a group with a clear bias, a clear purpose, and nobody has looked at it. And it's such bad data that it can't even be published in a scientific journal. This is what RFK Jr. is having the FDA take another look at. And so this study found this 11%, which Josh Hawley quotes there as having a serious adverse effect. The FDA found that it's actually 0.5%. And again, this is not a newly approved medication. This has been around since 2000. And in fact, it has been so safe that its approval has broadened, let's say, and it went from being approved for 6 weeks to 10 weeks. And then under Biden, what he's mentioning is he talks about how under Biden, they say that you don't actually even need to have an in-person visit. And this is what they don't like. Because it makes it more accessible to women. And anything that's making women's healthcare easier over an issue they don't like, they are going to fight it. But it's not just the United States. Like even if you think it's just the FDA, the World Health Organization, because this pill is used worldwide, finds it to be safe actually up to 12 weeks, even further than the United States is going. And it specifically talks about it being self-managed by the woman taking the pill. So we have not just the FDA finding after so many years it being so safe, they are broadening the ability, the accessibility of the pill, but the World Health Organization saying the same thing. And now suddenly we have RFK Jr., who's talking about Tylenol with autism, despite any evidence, now trying to get the FDA to change its label to either completely say it's not safe, perhaps to change the number of weeks going back, let's say, to make it limiting how long somebody can take the pill. And most likely reinstating some sort of rule where you have to do it in person in order to make it inaccessible for women who are either just working too many jobs and having a hard time seeing a provider, especially with all the cuts we're seeing in our healthcare system and some people not even having a primary care doctor that close by, and also women living in states that have made it outlaw. So this is their way of trying to go after the accessibility of this pill, despite the fact there's years and years and years of evidence backing up the safety of this, and not just here, but worldwide. We will be sure to keep you updated on this. It is sadly just one of the many attacks that Trump and RFK Jr. are on not only women's health, but all American healthcare, between the cuts in the Medicare system and trying to change how women can access healthcare over their pregnancy and whether or not they want to keep their pregnancy. Be sure to free subscribe so you can get all the updates.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.